what I'd like to do is just give you a sense of some of the opportunity areas for AI and digital transformation in business, and it's by no means intended to be complete, but to just give you a sense of what are some particular areas that are really interesting and have been successful, and then maybe some ideas about how to exploit that going down the road. So I'd like to start by just clarifying and level setting a little bit about what is artificial intelligence. And you'll see different viewpoints on this. You may have your own, but I have a particular view of what this is, and essentially it consists of three components that make it rather distinct. So the first is what I call heuristic computing, which is that most AI systems have a structure in which there is a computing logic that is based on what are called heuristics. And it's just technical, I won't really get into it, but that's one defining feature. And these heuristics, they work with a separate collection of what is thought of as domain knowledge. So if you think about it, it's like saying, okay, I've got this algorithm that's sort of generic, and then I've got this problem-specific knowledge that's sitting separate, and that interacts with these heuristics to solve problems. What's really important about this is that unlike traditional programs in which those two pieces are together, AI systems can evolve much more easily, because all you got to change is this. You don't have to change the basic algorithms. They remain the same. And so by enhancing the domain knowledge, you can change what the system is capable of doing. And that's a very powerful concept. Okay? So that's really central to this. But the most important part, and I think we heard that in the talk as well, is this third piece, which is learning. And that is that in an AI system, what happens is that as you get inputs coming into this system, whatever it might be, and getting computed, and you get an output, there's also this feedback cycle, which involves learning. And there's this learning technology that's embedded into any AI system that changes the domain knowledge over time and makes it better. So this is the most exciting part, right? But because this is where you're dealing with something that is changing and evolving over time. And traditionally, we've always thought of that as being associated with human beings, right? That we learn, we evolve, right? Machines are set. And as it turns out, with this kind of architecture, you can actually have machines that evolve as well. And so that makes them very powerful, very exciting, and to some extent kind of scary. So with that structure, what can we do? Well, you can do a variety of things. The basic sort of uses of AI I see as being in these sort of 6 areas, and I've kind of color-coded them to correspond to what happens at the interface of systems. So natural language interfaces, the fact that we can actually talk to computers, right? Or they can understand us, they can see our gestures and expressions, and computer vision, which is part of that as well. So these are 2 key areas of AI technology use that feature into systems at the interface, so the input. Okay? The next 2 correspond to use in that computing, in what gets processed. So key areas of one is systems that try to emulate some type of expertise in whatever problem domain you're trying to deal with. It could be diagnosis, it could be customer service, it could be whatever, but that's that processing piece. And then the third area is in terms of interaction, and that's where, again, on the output side, so that's where things like robots come into play, where you get actually an output that affects some kind of mechanical action, and in an extended case, you have autonomous devices and vehicles and things like that. Okay, so those are the 6 key areas or types of uses of AI technology. And if you think about how that gets manifested within businesses, again, you can identify some key areas in which they get implemented. So, for example, you have smart interfaces. So even if you take just traditional applications, okay, doing customer service, okay, processing things on an assembly line, whatever, you can enhance those with smart interfaces. So by using natural language or by using chatbots or whatever, various AI technologies, you can enhance how that traditional legacy system might be interacting with its user community. Right? You can then move to new applications with dynamic and adaptive processing as well. So this is where now you're saying it's not just the interface, we're actually going to change what we do within the system. And then you move on to what I call intelligent decision support systems. And this is where if you're solving problems, let's say everyone's got spreadsheet models, right? Well, spreadsheet models are great, but they're static. And what you can do with AI is you can enhance them, make them dynamic, where the capability of your model is actually changing with time. So now you're making smarter decisions in terms of anything from production planning to product management to innovation and so on, right? So these are, and I call them decision support systems because, again, you're not replacing management. What you're doing is you're enabling much more dynamic use of the resources that are available. Then beyond that, there's the automation of structured tasks. And this is where you use AI to take tasks that are routine, structured, which is structured in the sense that they follow some set logic, right? So if you look at what happens, let's say whether it's a bank teller or a worker on an assembly line, in each of those cases, the task that is being performed has a set structure to it. Most tasks that have structure are very, very are at risk to being automated. Okay? And AI plays a big role in that. And that's why when we talk about AI and its impact on work, the very first area at risk is structured tasks. And as we know, traditionally, work has kind of a hierarchy in terms of the number of individuals performing low-level tasks is much greater than the number of individuals performing high-level tasks. And so when you look at the impact on the workforce and labor and so on, is those structured tasks in terms of numbers are very large, and that's what gets a lot of visibility. And then finally, you have robotic structure for support for mechanical tasks. So just robots doing things that we don't want people to do, maybe because they're risky, dangerous, or they are tiring, they are just not, they cause burnout or whatever the case might be. You can replace them with robots. Okay? So these are some ways in which, again, within organizations, we're seeing quite substantial use of AI technology. So how, obviously there's all kinds of ways in which you can use these technologies, and one of the challenges is how do you kind of grapple with it, right? How do you think about it and reason about it? So we have actually developed a digital innovation framework that at the very high level, what that consists of is sort of 3 levels of innovation. So it starts by saying, okay, let's take your existing products and services. Now let's look at how you can use technology to enhance or improve the processes that are used to support, to make, to distribute, and to sell and market those products and services. And there's a whole variety of specific processes that you can enhance using digital technology, including AI. The second level is saying, all right, let's now go into the products and services themselves and see where can you use technology to digitalize the actual products themselves. Okay? And these could be by by taking existing features and making them digital. So I'll take a very mundane example. You take a suitcase, all right? You usually don't think of it as a digital product, right? And yet, today we have smart suitcases, right? In fact, the airlines now at the airport, they say, let us know whether you got a smart suitcase. 5 years ago, that would have been kind of a strange concept, but we've already started accepting it. So that's why you take a lock in a suitcase. It's a very mundane physical thing, but today you can have a digital lock. You can have a lock that can be activated remotely. You can have a lock that can be personalized with biometrics. Okay? So again, you can see that you can redefine what you have in your products with technology. And then you can also extend the product with digital add-on features, where you're adding new capabilities to the product, new features to the product or service that you did not have before. I'd like to use a very, very mundane example for this. In manufacturing, we have these things called MSDS, material. It's basically information about the features of materials, chemicals, whatever, paints, etc. And it turns out that information is traditionally been provided in very restricted form in terms of actual sheets that you provide. You get this information sheets. You digitalize that, you make those digital, and suddenly you provide for a much more enhanced product, because now that paint or that chemical comes with capabilities that allow you to reason about the product, where it can be used, how it can be used, how it can be acquired, how long it can be kept, etc., in a much more effective way than a paint that doesn't have those features. So you've kind of added capabilities that you didn't have in that product. And then, of course, finally, you can have new digital products. So and by the way, there's also, again, I'm just kind of going to race through this because it's at breakneck speed, right? So there's also a digitalization framework that actually looks at what I talked about just now, the whole idea of taking products and making them, putting digital features into them. There's actually a framework that consists of looking at the composition of products, what capabilities you want to incorporate in them, at what level of connectivity, and what context within which you do this. So this is interesting because, for example, we've used this with a bunch of industries, and when we use this particularly, let's say, in the service industry, so for example, in insurance, if you look at making insurance services digital products, okay, it turns out that a lot depends upon which stage of the product experience you're dealing with, right? Are you dealing with the stage at which a policy is being marketed and being initiated versus the stage at which the policy is being serviced? It turns out that there are different ways in which you can incorporate digital features at those different stages. So anyway, so there's some machinery that we can bring to bear in terms of thinking about and reasoning about this whole idea of incorporating digital technology, including things like AI, into products and services. And I thought this was an interesting example just to kind of make this real. So this is, I don't know if any of you have seen this. So this is the actual product that's out there. You can go on the web and see it. It's the smart desk from this company called Autonomous.AI. And it's interesting. It's again, you don't think of a desk as a digital product, right? And yet you can have this with this desk. It can learn your priorities. Okay. It can anticipate your needs and suggest the most efficient way to get things done. It can recommend shortcuts to help you enhance your productivity and improve your health. It has suggestions to help you juggle, focus, hustle, health, and downtime. Right? And it syncs with different capabilities like your calendar and so on. It schedules downtime, and it even adjusts to keep you from getting distracted. Okay? And you've seen that. I mean, you're watching now, right? It buzzes to tell you when you got to get up or when you got to breathe and stuff like that, right? So it's interesting how you can incorporate these features into products, and a lot of this is essentially AI technology. Okay, that's why they call it the AI smart desk. Now, that's just taking any one technology like AI, for instance. But I think what is far more exciting and far more interesting is not looking at these technologies in isolation, but looking at them collectively. So if you look at, our speaker this morning had a list of the trends and so on, and some of these were in there. These are kind of just specific to technology, to information technology. So we have a variety of trends that are shaping our business space today. Social networks, mobility, IoT and sensors, cloud computing, big data, and of course AI, and also platforms, a two-sided platform. These are very interesting and exciting trends that are leading to a lot of digital innovation of the type I was talking about. And among other things, what they're doing is they are changing the roles of different entities within our ecosystems. So for example, what the consumer or the customer does is changing, right? We've seen how even online applications have made customers, when we go and buy something, we actually do a whole lot of things that 20 years ago, there'd be people in the company that would be doing that. For example, auto entry. Just a simple example, right? We do our own auto entry. We're sometimes, many elements of marketing, what the salespeople used to do. Today it's interesting, you can actually walk into a store and you very often know more than the salesperson about the product, right? Well, that changes how does the company leverage its sales force and its workers and so on. And there are also new business models that are coming into play. What do you sell? What do you make money on? You might be actually, we talked about, our speaker talked about Tesla this morning. I could see a model where you could get a Tesla for free, right? But then you got to buy all the over-the-air updates, and that's what's making the product, right? So it's like the printer versus the ink kind of thing. But here it's information, right? It's knowledge, it's expertise that's coming into play. So it's this convergence of all these different technologies that creates really fascinating and interesting opportunities. And I think that's where there's going to be some of the most interesting innovation over the next few years. As an example that hopefully everybody can relate to, many of you may have it, think of the Nest thermostat, okay, the smart thermostat that you might put in your house. What's interesting is that it incorporates AI. It learns what you like the environment in your house to be, right? But it also is connected. You can connect to it remotely. It can actually also incorporate information from other houses and your neighborhood to look at what the environment is like and then factor that in. It can provide analytics. There's big data being collected through that device, okay? And so on. So there's a whole variety of different technologies that come into play even in that little thermostat. And that's what's so exciting about it. I did my doctoral thesis on AI in the late 70s and the early 80s. Okay? But back then, it was all exciting, pie in the sky stuff. We could talk about it in universities, but in industry, except for a couple of areas, wasn't much happening. Today, it's everywhere. Today, your Microsoft Word has AI. There's a little squiggle, red squiggles every time you misspell something. That's AI, right? So it's really all over, right? It's everywhere. And I just want to mention a few industries that really have been particularly effective in terms of how they've been able to leverage AI. So, for example, in healthcare, again, that's an industry that goes back to the 80s. Diagnostics with AI, medical devices, smart medical devices, that's a big area. In financial services, risk management, fraud, as well as customer service have been big areas. In retail, big data analytics with AI has been huge, right? So we've seen a lot of elements of that. In consumer products, we've seen really innovative applications in the area of supply chain management, and also, of course, smart products. And then, of course, defense is rife with AI applications at all levels of operational and tactical capabilities. Successful AI applications, it's not a case of replacing humans. It's a case of how do you forge effective human and machine collaboration. And that's actually not as easy as you might think, because understanding the right way to have people work with machines is non-trivial. But that's where the huge opportunities arise. We heard mention about the idea of, for example, working in groups. Think about the situation where that group includes some virtual agents or algorithms that you're interacting with along with other people. So that's again, it's not clear yet how to do that well. It's clear that AI will displace jobs. As I said, mostly structured jobs, but over time also other kinds of jobs. But it's also going to create jobs. Again, our speaker was kind of concerned about the fact that we'll have high unemployment. But I think it's not as simple as that. I think it's going to be, the changes are actually going to be much more dramatic. I mean, we are thinking today about work and employment. I'm not sure 20 years from now what employment is going to mean. And I'm not sure that the goal of people in society is going to be to achieve a 40-hour work week. Why do we need a 40-hour work week? I mean, if you can get everything we need and work 10 hours a week, what's wrong with that? Right? So, I mean, again, I'm not a fortune teller or a futurist, but I think some of these changes are, I think, more complex than I think they've been made out to be in many cases. Another example, just to give you a sense of how difficult it is, our speaker was talking about the fact that much of the changes and much of the benefits are going to accrue in, 21 cities or something like that. It's interesting because if you look at technology, what's actually going to happen is exactly the opposite in some ways, in the sense that you don't need to be in a big city to be effective if you have technology. There's already some very interesting trends where you're seeing a lot of innovation, some of the most exciting companies are actually small companies that are evolving in small places. People are living where they want to live, and they can work just as effectively. And some of the most exciting financial investment stuff is happening in places like the mountain states, right? So it's fascinating how these technology changes are happening, and it's not clear what's going to end up happening. But what is important is that companies, we're talking about business, so companies need to develop coherent strategies. And there's already research that shows that companies that are developing coherent AI strategies are already outperforming their competitors in their industries. So that means that this is important, and you need to take it into account in your management and leadership of your companies.